Well, hello and welcome. My name is James Rogers. I'm a part of Nexus Youth and Family Services Therapy Department, and this is Nathan Conover.
Hello.
And we are going to be talking today about childhood abuse and relationship violence. This content is created by Cheryl Hansen, and then we will be doing the presentation today. So, kind of a quick definition of abuse is defined by any action that intentionally harms or injures another person. We'll be going over the different types of abuse a little bit later in our presentation, but for right now, focus on intentionally harms or injures another person, and that's our definition of abuse.
Yeah, so there was a really big study that happened a few years ago. The CDC partnered with Kaiser Permanente in order to investigate childhood abuse and neglect and how that correlated with their later life health and well-being. And this is known as the ACE study, or the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. So when we talk about ACEs, this is what we're referring to. ACEs are traumatic events experienced in childhood, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, neglect, domestic violence, a whole variety of basically traumatic experiences we will be referring to as ACEs.
Mhm.
And so the ACE score, you fill out a little survey to see how many traumatic experiences you've suffered in your life. The ACE score captures the negative cumulative effect of all of these traumas, biologically, cognitively, and socially, for the emotional development of children, as well as the long-term outcomes later in life. More than 46% of children under 18 in the US have at least one ACE, and more than 20% have at least two, and plenty of children having way more than that. Socioeconomic status is relevant, as Black and Hispanic children are more likely to experience ACEs than their white or Asian peers, according to childtrends.org.
That's right. And a couple more kind of recent data indicates 37% of children experience a physical assault in their life. 15 experience maltreatment. And something that we've seen a growing trend right now, suicide is the leading cause of death for children ages 10 to 20. And kind of what Nathan was talking about is that long term. We are seeing the long term effects of multiple ACEs, and the percentage of children experiencing more ACEs is very high. It's increasing. And so the second leading cause of death in children 10 to 24 is suicide. And so something that we also want to show is kind of the neglect impacts on what we call the prefrontal lobe, or the executive function part of the brain. And you can see on the left side a more active, more highlighting brain than on the right side. And this is the impact that it has on neglect, that the brain actually doesn't develop as well as those from a healthy child, or those who are not experiencing as much neglect.
Yeah, so when a child is neglected or experiences trauma, the cognitive development correlates often with a higher ACE score. So these are some of the things that may happen with a higher ACE score. Problems with focus, learning, and processing new information, problems with language development, difficulty with planning and orientation to time and space, even impaired memory, amnesia, or altered states of consciousness. All of these things can happen when the brain doesn't develop properly. And then the social emotional development correlated with a high ACE score is also pretty stark. They may have trouble with relationships, boundaries, empathy, social isolation, difficulty identifying or labeling feelings and communicating needs, lack of consistent sense of self, low self-esteem, shame, guilt, and then also with impulse control. So when the brain doesn't develop properly, you see not only executive functioning is impaired, but also their social development is impaired as well.
That's right. Now, let's talk about the types of abuse. There's physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, and digital abuse, spiritual abuse, and neglect. And a couple examples is obviously, with physical abuse, we see that in hitting. Sexual abuse could be Rape, psychological abuse can be also talked kind of like manipulation. Financial abuse is taken advantage. We kind of see this more in maybe uh, s- children taking advantage of their elderly parents financially, and that would be financial abuse. Emotional abuse is verbal, how we treat. You kind of see this sometimes in, or kind of a big portion in children with parents using emotional abuse with their kids, or kids with um, kind of emotion abuse in themselves and using on other kids as well. Digital abuse, we see this a lot on the internet. We call it internet bullying. And then neglect as well with maltreatment, with lack of food, or maybe kind of some of the necessities of life are not given to a child, or kind of just as we are just neglect is when we're not given our necessities. So here's some relationship violence statistics. More than 1 in 3 women and more than 1 in 4 men in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. An estimated 1.3 million women are victims of physical assault by an inmate or intimate partner each year. 85% of domestic violence victims are women. And if you want to go ahead and read the rest of the statistics, you can go ahead and stop the video right here and go ahead and read it. We don't want to just sit here and rattle off statistics after statistics, but these are important, and we'd love for you to stop and pause and take a moment to kind of read these over.
Yeah, so now we have some red flags, as in get out of this relationship before you get further in. And some of these really only apply to romantic relationships, but some of them also apply to really anything, friendships or any other kind of relationship. So, I mean, pressure to move fast in a relationship, or they're overly invested in you. The pace of your relationship should be met collaboratively. So if one person is wanting to go way, way faster than the other, your red flag alert should be going off. If there's past abusive relationships in their past, and this is something that you got to ask about. This really requires honesty in the relationship. If the person is domineering, or if they have really rigid relationship roles, like this is what you will do, or this is how you will treat me, and it's just not reasonable. Jealous, possessive behavior. If they try to isolate you from friends or your family or your coworkers, your red flag alert should be going off. Angry and aggressive behavior, especially if it's only behind closed doors, because they might be trying to put up a front. Difficulty displaying emotions, or quick mood changes. 1 minute they're on cloud nine, and then the next minute they're really, really angry. That could be a red flag. Cruelty to children is a pretty obvious red flag, but also cruelty to animals. It may be a sign of a deeper issue. If they try to monitor your location, your activities, your spending, it's one thing if you are trying to be financially savvy and you guys are, trying to keep each other in check with your budget. It's another thing for them to track every single penny that goes through your card, and they are texting you about it and they're angry about it. These are the things that might start to build up to a bigger problem. If they don't respect your boundaries and simply don't listen when you say no, that's a really big problem, because as we know, consent is extremely important. If they try to control your eating habits, your sleeping habits, especially your medical care, these could be indicative of a larger personality issue. Obviously, if they push, punch, kick, bite, pull hair, any physical violence is really not okay. And then overly criticizing you, that could be a subtle one that could build up to a much, much larger problem. And then the relationship violence is all about power and control. So the way that it may manifest is coercion and threats, or intimidation techniques. They may use if it's a male and a female relationship, they may use their male privilege to get what they want. They may try to isolate you. They try to emotionally abuse you. A lot of the time, this comes out verbally. All of these different things always come back to the person trying to impose their will and to exercise power and control. This is generally what it comes down to, is the power and control aspect of it.
And here's kind of understanding a little bit more about the cycle of violence. And again, it's a cycle, so it could start anywhere, but generally, maybe there's a tension building, something happened, maybe there's someone's just something happened. There's tension building in the relationship, and then it kind of causes an explosion or acute explosion where they blow up. Maybe something happens. They either hit, they choke, they humiliate, maybe verbally abuse, destroy property. So that happens, and then there's this kind of come back down where they come back and they just beg for forgiveness. That's kind of the general thing, is like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. And it kind of ends up into this cycle, right? They promise things that they don't follow through. They'll say things like, I'll never do it again, I promise, I'm so sorry, I love you, right? Like, or overly begs for forgiveness, and then again, it happens all over again. And so you can kind of see this crazy cycle, or kind of this cycle of violence, if you will, kind of get caught up into this. And here's the thing. There's some way that we respond in that. For example, with the tension build, the victim may respond, attempts to calm partner, nurture, silent or talk to, or stay away from family or friends when they get upset. And then the acute explosion, maybe they protect themselves. Maybe the police are called. Maybe they try to reason, fight back, or leave. But then the victim's response in the honeymoon is maybe they agree to stay. They accept the person back, returns or takes the person back. And this is kind of the cycle that can get into. But the biggest thing kind of in the middle is denial. They minimize the abuse. They act as if it did not happen, or acting as if it will never happen again. This perpetrates the cycle of violence. And they continue into it until someone stops the cycle. Now, here's some mental disorders correlated with childhood abuse and relationship violence. There's complex trauma can result from the exposure of severe stressors, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, or neglect. Maybe witnessing a trauma or a violence can cause complex trauma as well. But just some mental disorders are PTSD, anxiety disorders, ADHD, depression, disassociation, and suicidality.
Yeah, so we don't want to be all doom and gloom. We recognize that a lot of this content can be kind of a downer, and it can be really hard to confront a lot of this stuff. So we also want to give you some interventions and strategies that you can implement in order to heal and grow. So the first thing is to know your ACEs score. If you were to just Google, ACE questionnaire, odds are it'll be one of the first things that pops up. It's like 10 little questions where you just rate yourself, and then you can figure out how many ACEs you have. And then based on how many ACEs you have, you'll know, oh, okay, like I really need to make sure that I surround myself with some protective factors, or maybe you don't have to worry about it nearly as much. And that would be the next thing, is to know your resiliency score, which are these protective factors that you can then build upon. You always want to be able to lean into people. That is going to be the common theme through all of these interventions, is we need people to help. Another good thing might be to put resource phone numbers in your phone now. This is not something that you want to just put off, because it's really easy to keep on putting it off and putting it off. You want those, crisis line numbers in your phone before you need them, to be able to build resources before you have a problem, right? So this doesn't it's not exclusive to just crisis line numbers, but people are super helpful, whether it's just a friend, or whether it's a spiritual guide, or a mentor, or a counselor, a therapist. You want to be able to anticipate potential problems so that when the problems come, you are ready for it. Don't try to tough it out. Don't try to go it alone, or just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We all need help. We can't just do this alone. And if you struggle, tell somebody. Tell a friend, a pastor, counselor, professor, teacher, whoever is there for you in your life that will want to hear what you have to say. Support groups can be really, really helpful for a wide variety of issues, whether it's AA or Al-Anon, or any types of tons and tons of support groups exist for just about anything that a person could be going through. Self-care is also really important. In the original ACE study, they found that nutrition, exercise, having good friends, and sleeping, in addition to several other factors, were some of the most effective protective factors in being able to help grow and heal and mitigate the consequences of their ACEs. And then having a safety plan, if you are feeling either suicidal, or if you struggle with self-harm, or if you're in a relationship where there is violence, safety plan, coming up with people to call, or a plan of action for those protective factors to be able to help you, can be extremely helpful and could save your life.
That's right.
And then these are just some of the numbers. National Suicide Hotline, there's a crisis text line, all sorts of different numbers that you can call or text depending on what it is you're struggling with.
And here's some online resources, such as Love is Respect, where it talks about relationship violence, question information, a lot of other online resources that you can, if you want to pause right now and go ahead and find these, or if you have any questions, you can reach us at Nexus, and we'll help you kind of find some good resources, whether in your community or online. Again, thank you for watching. My name is James, and this is Nathan Conover. We are part of Nexus Youth and Family Services. That is our address. And you can give us a call for a variety of different services that we have. And we hope you have a great day and enjoy this content.